Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 14th installment of the PASS Facebook Live. Look, I got 5 words in and already screwed it up. This is our Pop Expert series. It's a real-time live Q&A session, and you'll have the opportunity to ask me any questions in my technical area. I specialize in kind of Azure Automation and Power BI and Oracle to SQL Server migrations, a little bit of DB2, Sybase, whatever else you want to throw in there on migrations to Azure, as well as SQL Server and performance data. Any of those related questions, love to answer them for you. If you have those questions, please type them in the comments below in that section, and they'll appear on screen, and I will answer them as they come in. It's kind of like one of these game shows, but there's no prizes at the end. Sorry. But who am I? My name is Kellyn van Gorman. I am a Azure Data Platform Architect with Microsoft, but I have a long history in the technical community, both Oracle as well as Microsoft. Definitely newer on the Microsoft side, about 3-4 years in. Oracle, 2 decades. It's been a while. But I am a multi-platform database administrator that became a DevOps engineer, and then I got bored, and now I'm doing analytics and AI just for the fun of it. And I work with higher education and K-12 customers at Microsoft. I just got back from New York working with a customer on their Oracle migration into Azure, of course. That's my bread and butter about 60% of the time. And then the other 40% of the time I get to work on things like Power BI and analysis services and Azure Data Factory, Databricks, all that fun stuff. So it's pretty cool, pretty awesome. I am the president of the SQL Server user group out of Denver. We have our own SQL Saturday coming up October 12th, so next month. It's a little crazy over there right now, so we're planning that. And I was even the president of the Oracle user group there until just about a year and a half ago. We had cats and dogs sleeping together in Denver. It was kind of weird. And I was an ACE director on the Oracle side, and IDERA ACE previously on the Microsoft side, and I'm a friend of Redgate, so I'm very deeply involved in the community. I believe it's your way of giving back. As much as the community gives us, I think it's important to return that favor. And I really enjoy technology, so you will see me talking about a lot of different technologies hopefully today, and you've got those odd questions about automation and how to do it. I'm not a PowerShell person. I'm definitely all bash all the time. I can point you in the right direction for the PowerShell, but I'm that person that's talking about Linux at PASS Summit this year, and I love all the technology all the time, but I'm definitely a Linux and Oracle and SQL Server fundamentals person, and would love to see some questions coming in from you. So if you've got those questions, please feel free to start them, and I am looking forward to answering them. So our first question has come in. This is a community question. What is out there to help me migrate my databases up to Azure? So there's a lot of tools out there. It's not only, if you're taking a SQL Server database and taking a backpack file and bringing it up into the database itself, you have SQL Server Migration Assistant, no matter what your platform is. I always thought it was interesting, wherever I was at, they tell me, oh, I don't need your SQL Server skills, or I don't need your Oracle skills. They'd want one or the other. And about 6 weeks in, you find out there was something mission critical on the other platform they were telling you they didn't need. So, having that ability with like the SQL Server Migration Assistant and grabbing the extension pack for the database platform that you're interested in migrating over, you can bring that into SQL Server pretty easily. The extension pack will identify and do assessments, and then, identify whatever, incompatibility issues they are, allow you to fix those and migrate that database pretty easily. When you get into Azure, of course, you got Azure Database Migration Services. You have the ability to utilize a number of features within that will do very similar ways of going through, doing an assessment, identifying any incompatibilities and do those across. You have Azure Import and Export to just bring your data over if you want to build the database on your own. It's a PaaS environment. You can deploy that database and bring that data. You can even do data migrations with Azure Data Factory. So keep that in mind. There's a data migration tool for Azure DevOps those are available as well. So there are so many different tools that you can utilize and make yourself extremely successful with migrations when you're going over to Azure. Hopefully that answered that first question. Do we have another question coming in? Next question coming in from the community is, what are the biggest challenges to moving to the cloud? This usually isn't the challenges that most people think. They get hung up on the idea of, oh, I'm going to have to refactor a whole bunch of this code. And there's not that much code often to refactor. There's a couple features, they're worried about the SQL agent, or when they're going to pass, or they're worried about, they need log shipping or some other feature that isn't available in the product that they may even go in Dynamics and say, I don't have that. What I found is often the network, that the network isn't robust enough and they're not willing to invest in like ExpressRoute to ensure that they have that viable connection. They aren't identifying the applications that will require a fast connection and may need to be part of that migration project too and move to the cloud as well. They don't identify what services are already available in the cloud that could take over that application and eliminate need for support there that could then be reallocated towards the database migration. And then having those developers available if you do need to refactor any code at all. That's usually the main areas that I see as roadblocks to the cloud for most customers. The cloud migration, the database migration is rarely, if ever, the roadblock in the project. Do we have more questions that are coming in? And I'll slow down, otherwise we'll be done in like 15 minutes the way that I go here. Another question, what are some of the biggest differences between Oracle and SQL Server? Well, this question could just go on for days. Oracle and SQL Server have a lot of architectural differences. The actual fundamentals are very different as well, and it can be very confusing. The only reason that I do well in them, I say that I'm like bilingual. It's just like being able to translate a language. But when we get into the architecture itself, if we take indexing, for example, SQL Server really makes its bread and butter on indexing with clustered indexes that are pre-sorted. And there's maintenance on top of those, of course, that you have to go in and clean those up from time to time. And that's really a foreign kind of idea to most Oracle DBAs because most of their indexes are heap. They rarely ever work within index organized tables, which are the closest thing to clustered indexes. There's just small use cases for them. The reason that we don't need those clustered indexes is we have something that is utilized called PGA. And PGA is a process global area. That is a unique area of memory that is allocated and does a lot of different things. But one of the things that it does is sorting and hashing. And so it does a lot of sorting for those indexes. What it also takes care of is anytime that there is an allocation of that memory, there is a limitation also put onto it that says you have so much memory that can be allocated towards this type of sort, this type of hash, this sort. Every single piece has this allocation. And it is estimated, of course, through the optimizer, just like you would see in SQL Server. And if you do more or your stats are off or anything like that, your optimizer makes a poor decision, or there's just not enough memory to do what you want to do, it's going to swap over to our temp table space. Now, temp table space is disk. Disk is slow, and of course, performance will lag because of that. On the SQL Server side, you have a temp database, and that means that there's memory as well as disk allocated to that. Well, you don't need as much memory to do those sorting because those indexes, of course, are pre-sorted. Architecture is different, so that's a really big difference there. Another difference is when we start talking about hints. Hints on Oracle are a suggestion. Hints on SQL Server are a definitive decision of saying you will use this index. So if the index is missing, the SQL statement will fail. That's kind of foreign on the Oracle side, where it'll just ignore it and just keep looking for something else to do. It may make the least optimized choice because of it, but it'll just keep running. There are a lot of fundamental differences there. How we look at instance, an Oracle instance are those background processes and everything else that's running. You start that instance, where the SQL Server instance is actually what we would call the Oracle home. There's a lot of differences there in just how it was designed. They many times reuse terminology, and the terminology may mean different things. But there's a lot of similarities too. We start talking about table spaces. We have file groups in SQL Server. We have table spaces in Oracle. We start talking about different situations when we have the optimizer. Optimizers are very similar. They actually do a lot of the same things now. They may talk about it in a little bit different way. I find the optimizer in SQL Server right now is at a really good sweet spot. Some of the optimizer features in the Oracle that have gone autonomous, I'm not as crazy about. I'm a DBA. I have control issues. I want to be able to control some of that stuff more. And to make it easier for those that may not know as much, the autonomous database has made it easier for the database to make decisions for it. And sometimes that can end up shooting you in the foot. So I may not like that. I may want more control. I know what I'm doing. I want that control. And I find Microsoft does that for me. So it's always about, what is your use case? What is the knowledge level that people have? And what do they know about it that they can actually make a benefit of that product? But that's kind of some ideas of where they're different and how they're the same. And hopefully that answered that question. Next question from Chuck Jacobson. What is your top feature of Power BI that you wish was in Power BI Report Server? Do you see some of the AI-ish features coming to on-prem? Wow, this is an interesting one. I think of Power BI and Power BI Report Server is very different products. I'm late into the game. I didn't use SQL Server Report Server. So to me, Power BI Report Server, the strength in it is that you are able to take those pixel perfect, those paginated reports and bring them into Power BI, where Power BI is that interactive, that ability to dig down into your data and your reports and to see that data in a whole new light. But top features in there, I just find that they serve different needs. So I don't know if I'd say I want Power BI features in Power BI Report Server. I might say that I want more of the SQL Server Report Server features in Power BI Report Server. Hopefully that answers it. That some of that more advanced reporting capabilities that are implemented within RDL files that I would like to see in the Power BI Report Server. It's still pretty high level on what it all can support. So that's where I would go with that question versus taking the Power BI features. And then do I see some of the AI-ish features coming to on-prem? I really don't. The Power BI server that is on-prem, most companies are going farther and farther away from on-prem solutions. We all know that, it's a hard sell a lot of times to our management to go to the cloud. And I was one of those. I had a real difficult time going to the cloud. I'm a DBA. I want control. I wanted control of it all. I wanted to know where my server was, what I was doing with it. And when I started working with the cloud, the ability to deploy as fast as I was deploying, that I had control. And I'm an infrastructure as a service person, but there were many times where I didn't need that control over it. I just needed a database. I needed it now. I just want a Power BI service that you have this monstrous, cloud environment that you can shard across all of these and gain in some ways greater performance with that we could never do with an on-prem server, really just amazes me. And I think you're going to see that, especially when we start talking about AI. AI can do a lot more in a cloud solution than it can on an on-premise solution. And because everyone is moving to the cloud, and it is easier to do it in a versionless, serverless, more really cloud solution, they're going to move. They're not really going to, or at least this is my opinion, I should say, in my opinion, I don't see a lot of those AI features moving to the on-prem. And I'm not a product manager, so I could be completely off, but that's my opinion and my look on that. So hopefully that answers that question. And I think I probably broke all your dreams and hopes, and I apologize. Another question from the community. This year will be my first summit. Any advice how I can get the most out of my time there? My first summit was 4 years ago. 4 years ago, 2016. This will be my fourth year. And when I went to the first time event. I'm trying to remember what it is, the networking event, and I highly recommend it to anyone who goes. Um, it sounds crazy when you get there. You walk in, you're going to be like, "What is this?" You're going to see chairs lined up facing each other, and you're going to want to run from the room if you're an introvert like me. I am actually an introvert. You may not see it, but I am. And you sit down and they will have you have questions and you will talk to the people across from you. You will move one chair. You will continue to talk to the next person, the next. And these people that you will meet at this networking event, you will run into for the rest of the week. You will see them year after year. You will already know people and you will not feel so alone. And I think, from somebody who has goes to so many questions or goes to so many conferences and goes to so many events. I've been the only woman at an event many times. The networking opportunity there to get to know people and not feel so alone really made a difference. I thought it was one of the most awesome things that I've ever seen at a conference. And I even stole it and brought it back to my Oracle conference because I was like, oh my gosh, the Oracle people could really benefit from this too. It is a great event. So definitely do that. Go to the keynotes, blog about those events. I strongly advocate blogging. I believe that it's something that you put out there, you put your voice out there, and people go, oh, nobody wants to hear what I have to say. Everybody has something valuable to give. So I believe in doing that as well. Talk about what you enjoyed there, why other people should go see it. Talk about the sessions that you go to, and definitely talk to those that have been there long term to find out what sessions should you go to. I found that's how I found out who is who in the community that knew what they knew and how to find out what I needed to know. I had been working at Oracle at that point and hadn't had an opportunity to really keep up with the SQL Server content. And that gave me the ability to say, oh, go see this individual. He really knows his stuff. You'll learn a lot about it, this feature, this product, and that made a huge difference in my life that I was able to pick up very quickly and return to the Microsoft life. So hopefully that was some good advice to help you out with that. Another question from the community: what surprises me most about going to Azure with other versus other clouds or from other clouds? Again, I have kind of an odd history. I've worked in the Oracle Cloud. I've worked in AWS. I did a lot of deployments in like with Terraform and things like that before I came to Azure. I think with Azure, one of them is that the partnership with partners. It was a true partnership. I really thought that was a benefit. The product itself is very easy to use, and the ability to learn, to self-teach, and to work with the product was important. When I got here, I really hadn't worked that much with Azure. I was like, oh yeah, I've worked with Azure before. Got out there, I didn't know as much as I thought I did. Sometimes my confidence gets away from itself. And got out there, there was so much content online to help me out that I was writing everything in Bash. Most stuff was out in PowerShell, yet I was still able to reverse engineer a lot of stuff, figure out how it works. This was deployments from end to end. So, I was working with not just the infrastructure, but the databases, the code, the logical objects, and all the way through Azure Data Factory. I mean, I had to learn all of this from the get-go, and I was able to find examples that I was able to take snippets from, figure it out, and learn how to deploy on my own. I don't know if I could have done that with AWS or Oracle Cloud. I really don't. And it says a lot about the community, says a lot about Microsoft documentation. It says a lot about Azure Cloud itself, that the Azure CLI is that robust and it's building constantly. And it was a little bit more difficult when I first started out a year and 4 months ago. I will tell you now, I can find Azure CLI commands like that. I can write anything I need to. And it may be that my experience has broadened, quite a lot in the last year, but I also think it says a lot that, everybody's starting to add more and more and more, and it just grows and you all learn from it. The other thing I loved from it is that we not only eat our own dog food inside Microsoft, but because we're using it, it grows and it gets better and it becomes more robust. Um, I am able to deploy solutions for just about every customer's needs. When I'm working with them, they're like, "This is the problem I have." I need to take these Oracle databases, but I need to connect them to SQL Server too. And I'm trying to build a data warehouse, but I have this SAP HANA database, and I'm able to build a solution for them all in one cloud. When I came there, they were like, "Oh, we got these Oracle databases." I was like, "I can build them on virtual machines. That's no problem at all. I can migrate them over. You don't want to retrain developers? No problem at all." And I didn't get any pushback at all. They were very accepting of other technologies, and that they realize that everyone needs what they need to succeed, and they're willing to give us that. And I think that's really wonderful on the Azure side, that they understand that it doesn't have to be all Azure all the time. It can be Azure and whatever else you need, and just build it so that the customer is happy. Chuck Jacobson, is there a practice version of various Azure services? Practice version. So there is an allowance of dollars that you can use. And I would also say that many of the features within Azure that have higher price tags on it, you can make sure that you can dial it down, pause it, shut it down when you're not using it. That makes a huge difference. I learned that very quickly. I have an allotment that's given to me as an employee at Microsoft, and using your cost estimate, your analysis and everything, you can see what's costing what when you're building out your Azure environment, and you can go out there and pause it and shut it down. You're like ADF, pause your pipelines, analysis services, same thing there. If you have VMs, when you're not using them, shut them down. You have, I think it's, and I know I'm an Oracle or I'm a Microsoft employee, so I'm not outside. I have internal consumption, but isn't it? I think it's, you get like $200 or something like that, and it's worth it. It's worth it working about this. Also, look at the ability to use whatever products are free, because there are free AI. If you look at the very top of the Azure portal, it'll say what features are out there. And when you deploy something, it also gives you a list of what free ones are out there. So if you go out there, there are free ones that you can try out. So look at those too. They're at the very top of the portal whenever you log in from your main dashboard. Another community question: what feature do you love most about Azure? The Azure CLI with the Azure Cloud Shell. When I first started, I thought I needed to learn PowerShell. I really needed to brush up. When I was doing Windows with, I was 2008 R2 with SQL Server, and PowerShell still wasn't the thing yet, not at least in where I was working. I just didn't pick up PowerShell, and I needed to learn it. And I was like, oh, one more shell won't be a big deal. But I'm able to work in Bash. Whenever you reverse engineer and grab your ARM templates, you will see that the CLI is just Bash, and that I am able to go into the Azure Cloud Shell and say, instead of PowerShell, click on it and go Bash. I write all my scripts in Bash. There's nothing against PowerShell, it really isn't, but you don't have awk, you don't have set, you don't have grep, and these are very, very powerful commands. So any of you guys listening out there from the PowerShell group, pull those in really quick. The capabilities versus match is immense. I really can do so much more with those. So I write everything in Bash. I have 300-line Bash scripts that have replaced literally 64 lines of JSON in ARM templates. It's a huge difference. It's completely dynamic. I can make it interactive with the customer. They ask 4 to 6 questions, and it deploys everything for them. And with many of my customers, because they're in higher education or K through 12, they don't have that technical knowledge to build this. They could be waiting weeks or months just to figure out how to deploy their Azure environments. For me to give them a script and for them to just run it and have it in 10 minutes makes a huge difference. And we're talking, again, infrastructure, services, objects, even sample code. If they want sample code to just kick it around for a POC, I can write all of that. And the Azure Cloud Shell gives me that ability to do that with the Azure CLI. And I've never had that ability before. I could use Terraform, and many times you have to write all that out. The customer still has to install Terraform, everything. This is inside the Azure portal. Right next to your search bar, you have that little icon that looks like a command prompt. You click on that, you're in the Azure Cloud Shell. Or you can go to Azure Cloud Shell just directly from the actual browser, and you have that. I can do it from my iPad. I can do it from my phone. That's pretty immense. So I'm very amazed by the Azure Cloud Shell and the capabilities of that with Azure CLI. And another community question: what is my biggest reason for moving businesses to Azure over on-prem? One is speed of deployment. Customers so often are waiting. We think that it's not that big a deal to say, oh, we're just going to deploy a server, we're going to give it to the DBAs, we're going to give it to our application people, they're going to deploy their stuff, and then everybody's going to be happy, jolly, and we're going to go to production. It's not really how it goes. We have to have money that's budgeted. We need to have somebody who goes in, puts in the PO, and then they end up doing the actual order for the hardware. The hardware has to be installed. The cables have to be hooked up. Somebody has to set up the OS. They need to do the security. And we start adding up all of these things. And suddenly something that looked like it was going to take a week takes months. And when you get into Azure, I can deploy fully secure servers, viable for production use, literally a minute or two. That is a huge change for most of these companies. When we start talking about all the redundancy that's built into the system, the high availability redundancy that's built in and designed for it because it has to be in the cloud, has to be if something fails, that we have the ability with wizards and services to, just with a couple clicks of a mouse, build up systems that would be secondary servers that, again, would be months. This is the power of Azure. This is the power of the cloud versus on-prem. That we can say, oh, you're putting people out of business, you're putting people out of their jobs. Not really. I have been a DBA forever, and I was sick of creating databases. I was sick of backing up another database. I just want to set it up, get it off my plate, and go do more interesting things. And this is what really pushed me into more of a DevOps career as well as an architecture career. As a career as an architect was the idea that I can do more interesting things. And maybe it's the ADHD person in me, but I would much rather do more interesting things. And I think that's also what the cloud gives you, is it takes away all this boring, tedious work and allows you to do the things that your brain really is cut out to do and really offer more value to the company. The business moves faster, revenue comes in faster, and you're doing more interesting things. I really can't find a downside to that. And doing another backup, no thank you. I'd much rather just schedule that and let it be done by Azure and have it set out there. Click. I don't need to be, in Oracle, it's the RMAN commands, which are a lot more frustrating, I think, than the SQL Server side of recovering a database from T-SQL. But I don't need to be doing that anymore. I have more important stuff on my plate. And if you have a question, please feel free to type it in to the comment section below. I would love to answer it. Again, DevOps, Oracle, SQL Server, weird questions on the community. I've been in the community for, I don't know, about 10 years now between Oracle and SQL Server. I've done keynotes, all kinds of stuff. Always glad. I can take one more question, but I'll answer the one that just came up. Community question: why do you think DBAs make good DevOps engineers? I've helped a number of DBAs become DevOps engineers because we, one, have control issues. We make very good control people. So DevOps engineers, that's very important, is to make sure that from development to operations, that things don't break, that you follow procedure, that you have policies in place. Also, your scripting skills. Automation is key when it comes to DevOps, and we have very robust querying skills. So I think that's extremely important that you can do that as well. So DBAs are just gauged to this. You have many companies that are looking for DevOps engineers with 10, 15 years of experience, and they don't exist. They do not exist. I mean, DevOps was quoted in 2009. So, I mean, we're right there at that decade, and having people with a decade of experience is almost unfounded. So if you can do that, really consider that, that your skills, when we start talking about going to the cloud and how you can be more valuable, this is one way. Automation, DevOps, get your Scrum certification, start becoming a Scrum Master and helping out there. Because most of that automation you can build into it, and you will know the code, know the database, and most of the infrastructure underneath. And with that, I think we have finished up our time. This was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed asking questions. If you have more, please feel free to put them in there. I will be glad to follow up afterwards with any documentation, any kind of answers that I didn't give here. I want to thank everyone for joining, participating in the past Facebook Live pop-up expert session. There were some great questions. You guys did really wonderful. PASS has an amazing line of experts that are coming up at the Facebook page. You can see them. They're actually listed details that are upcoming. And you can go to pass.org. If you're not already a member, I'm pretty sure you are if you may be connected to this. But if you're not, definitely go out there. There's so much free content and knowledge-based knowledge sharing that's out there, as well as considering maybe going out and not just getting the educational resources, but going to PASS Summit this year. I have 2 sessions that will be available that are part of the new learning pathways. One of them is on becoming a technical leader. I'll be doing that one with Denise, and that one's on Wednesday, November 6th at 10:15 a.m. It is, like I said, becoming a technical leader. So we're going to talk about technical leadership, and that's not the same as management. So I want to keep that in mind. How can you use those leadership skills and not end up losing those opportunities of being a techie person? And then the other one is my technical session, which I will be teaching you how to build Linux scripts. I will be teaching you right along with you. I will be teaching you how to write a script in the 75-minute session. You should be leaving with a working script when I'm done, building out functions, the whole work in Bash. And that one is on Thursday, November 7th at 1:30 p.m. in 614 is the room there. And I would love if you come for that one as well. And that's part of another learning pathway. So that's the Linux learning pathways one. So that's one up in your technical skills now that SQL Server 2019 as well as 2017 is on Linux. And with that, thank you. I appreciate it. You are awesome. Thank you for joining today.